There's a segment of educators out there who fear that AI is going to replace them. So, should they stop worrying or assume the fetal position?
I think they should stop worrying. I know there's a ton of companies looking at like using Gen AI for curriculum creation, for automatic grading and stuff. I think if you blindly used one to grade all of students' essays and then the student looked at what happened and tried to ask why they got that grade, a lot of this stuff is black box as well, and
Mm.
that would be quite bad. So like the teachers will still need to have some sanity check to confirm what it's doing is there. So it might take from 3 hours to 30 minutes to grade something. So really, it's not replacing anyone. You're still going to need subject matter experts in the area. It should just more be a tool to make your life more efficient.
Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
Our guest today is Dr. Andrew Lawrence, co founder and CTO of Neulight, an edtech company transforming K 12 education with AI driven solutions. At Neulight, Andrew leads the development of IntelliTier, a platform that empowers schools to implement the multi tiered systems of supports, or MTSS, framework, enabling personalized and data driven student support. He holds a PhD in computer science with an expertise in AI research. Dr. Lawrence has a passion for education and is dedicated to using technology to improve student outcomes, something Nick and I feel very strongly about. Dr. Lawrence, welcome to State of Ed podcast.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, can you tell us a little bit about Neulight and what led you there?
Yeah, absolutely. You had my co-founder Jose on a few episodes ago, and I think he gave a bit of the story. But our general idea is trying to really help schools implement MTSS with fidelity across all three tiers. So if people aren't aware, it's a multi-tiered approach where you give support to different students based on their need. Tier one is support that's available to all students. Tier two is a bit more targeted support for students that need it. And tier three is a bit more extensive. What we found speaking with educators is they're quite motivated to implement MTSS, but a lot of the training materials are quite esoteric and there's just potentially not really much time to learn it. So we're developing IntelliTier as a tool to help them answer like what level of support does a student need and who needs, more support. So kind of proactively letting them know before it gets too late.
Yeah, we were very taken with our with the introduction we got with Jose. It was amazing. So I'm just curious, like prior to AI coming onto the scene, what was
Mhm.
your experience with this type of work?
So the ed tech space is new for me, actually. I have quite like a bizarre background. So Jose and I met at Harvey Mudd. Before we started recording, I guess you guys went to university together, and that's where Jose and I met for undergrad. I actually did engineering, and he did computer science. So in an earlier life, I was more of an electrical engineer. When I graduated, I went to work for a satellite communication company in San Diego and was more working on the defense side of communication. But I kind of always wanted to go back to school and get my master's. And I had an opportunity to do that after I moved to the UK, which is maybe a bit of a longer story. So I actually took a year sabbatical from that job to get my master's, but I was quite uh, worked well with my thesis advisor for my master's and decided to stay on and do a PhD. So I completed my PhD. That was my first like real deep dive in machine learning or artificial intelligence, whatever you want to call it. I think people switch back and forth. And then from there, I joined a startup in London focused on causal AI. So it's a specific type of artificial intelligence that's really trying to find what's the underlying cause of certain things and not just modeling based off of correlational aspects. So like maybe a very common example is Like zip code is a proxy for race, especially in the US. So like, and salary is a proxy for gender. So like they're highly correlated, but there really shouldn't be like a causal link between them. So a lot of machine learning kind of fails because it's just passively looking at these like observed correlations. There's quite a good website, I think, that has like correlation of Nick Cage movies and like I don't know, drownings, and they like line up pretty well, but obviously there's no connection. You don't want to model based off of that. So that's what I was focused on.
Have you seen a Nick Cage
So I
movie?
had like five, I've seen, yeah, quite a few.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think The Rock maybe is my favorite one, so the bit of an old one. Or Raising Arizona actually is my favorite. Um, but I've always been motivated by AI for good. So kind of what we were focused on a lot at my old job was really helping like enterprises and businesses kind of improve their modeling to kind of get marginal gains, right, on like revenue and stuff, which is all good, but like isn't, give you like the warm fuzzies for making a positive impact in the world. My parents were social workers. That's how they met. And my mom was went back to school after I was born. She got her master's in education. Then she was a special ed teacher, worked her way up to sped director and then assistant superintendent before retiring. And my parents always kind of like imbued on me, the need to kind of, you know, do good in the world. And I just kind of didn't get that reward in my previous job. So really wanted to come on here where I think we could have a big impact.
You're going to have a major impact. You also, I feel like you just gave us like 2 minutes of what life would be like on Harvey Mudd's campus. The
Yeah.
beginning. I don't know, Mark. I think I would have struggled, but
I wouldn't
the
have even
level
gotten
of
in,
it,
so it's fine.
the level of intellect. So yeah, we think the product is incredible, and I'm just curious, how you, from the computer science side, how did you kind of come up with how you're going to be able to match AI with the work you want to do with school districts?
Yes, so I guess obviously this big wave of generative AI with the release of like probably GPT-3 was quite like a generational change. And we kind of saw a big way to kind of, I think Jose used this, but he stole the wording from me, like democratize the knowledge of in really complex areas in an interface that makes it quite easy for people. So we have like these base foundational models that are kind of trained on the entire internet. They stole data from everybody to not mince words and built these large language models. So they kind of have like a good base knowledge of a lot of things, but it's not super deep. It's kind of surface level. But you can provide these base models that are quite good at English, and there's more now that are multilingual with supplemental knowledge. So like that's where we bring in like the various materials of MTSS or like PBIS, RTI. There's quite a lot of stuff, and we can provide that to the base model while also providing student individual like context about maybe prior behavioral events, but also stuff about what school resources there are if they have any specific policies. One of the schools that we work with now is totally virtual, so obviously they might want to have different intervention plans than a physical school would be. So we're really building on the shoulders of giants for what they've released to be able to provide this.
What kind of privacy
Don't worry, Andrew.
challenges?
I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead, Nick.
I was gonna say I steal Mark's words all the time as well. So,
So true.
but I give him credit though. I give him credit. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
It's 50-50. What kind of privacy challenges do you run into now that you're moving, these large language models, and now you're infusing them with students and their records and all these interventions? What kind of challenges do you run into privacy wise?
Yeah, so that was one of our biggest, not concerns early on, but obviously was something we needed to figure out before we could allow any schools to be onboarded. So IntelliTier is FERPA compliant, which is like the big US government regulation for student data privacy protections. So we don't send anything to OpenAI or anything. We host our own base model on like the Azure platform. Nothing goes to Microsoft, like everything's just kept private. We also have quite a strict permissioning system in the software. So it's not like any user who logs into Springfield Elementary can see Bart Simpson, right? Only certain people should have access to it. So by default, like you would not be able to see Bart's history unless it was approved by an administrator. So it'd be impossible for you to get to that. You couldn't send it to the AI unless you're given permission, essentially. But the big thing, yeah, is really hosting our own models and not sharing anything with third parties.
Can you, like, if you're sitting down with a school district and the school district says to you, you know, these are some of the things we feel that we're not being efficient with our time, whatever it may be. It may not have to just be specific to individual students and their data. Can you come up with plans for them where you're using AI to try to help them be more efficient?
Yeah, we could. I guess maybe need to think about like a more concrete example. Right now, the product is very focused on student support, so like maybe tier two and three for the individual, or tier one at like a classroom level or a grade. But we have like some areas where you can provide more information about the school itself or upload like school resources and stuff, and there chat with the assistant. So I kind of think one area where I see kind of the future going is maybe a bit more moving away from these like generic chat interfaces. I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to interact with the AI. So maybe like you're working on a student, you could think of having like a skeleton of an intervention plan, and then the AI is just helping you in different sections, then trying to have like a back and forth chat where you then like export it out. But I think where you're talking about of more like brainstorming things of like, you know, we have these three problems outside of, you know, a student's behavioral, social, emotional, or academic things, maybe then like a generic chat interface would be good just to brainstorm some things. But we haven't looked at that too much, but I don't see it being crazy difficult to add at all.
I mean, I think what I'm most excited about is if education's going to make the changes that it needs to make, because everybody that's in education for a long time, we just feel like the system is broken. There are things in our way. What's going to need to happen is that education needs to be individualized for kids. You know, the standardization of education is what a lot of teachers are complaining about. We talk about differentiating, yet at the same time, everything is standardized in terms of assessments. So what your product is going to be able to do, I feel like, is create those individualized plans for students. That's why I think this is a gold mine.
Yeah, I would. Two maybe like difficulties with it, not to try to like undersell it is, yeah, right now like it's being informed by like this wider MTSS framework, which is like evidence backed, but in general, I don't think it's been defined on like maybe a really wide data set. I think maybe some of the experiments are only like 30 schools, so a lot of the stuff is kind of defined not with minimal evidence, but not like a massive big data set. So what I kind of see is if we have a lot of schools and we can track, this was the intervention we recommended. Did you do it? Did you do something else? If you did it, what was the outcome over time? What do we anticipate it would have been if you did something else? Then we could theoretically collect a data set that we could do privacy preserving on, and then use that to kind of inform the next generation of MTSS. Because I don't think, I haven't seen like a study where it's been run on tens of thousands of students or something. Right. And the other caveat on, say, the very personalized plans for students or even assessments, so kind of outside of what IntelliTier is working on, we're not like, looking at creating individualized curriculum or like different assignments for each student. A lot of that would have to be based on very, very small data, especially like at the start of the year. You don't know much about the student, so you want to probably start maybe more universal and then personalize as you go. And that's kind of an area where I don't think the Gen AI is the best thing, because it's just trained on this massive data set. It's not that good at looking at 2 or 3 samples. So we would really need to think how we could supplement that some more. And the third problem is you need to be very sensitive on the fairness when it comes to having a different treatment for every single student. This was what I was working on a lot in my previous job. but maybe more like in the finance space. So you can imagine some bank has an algorithm that approves someone for a mortgage, but it approves men 80% of the time and women 60% of the time. Is that algorithm fair? It's hard to say. It could not be looking at gender at all. That could not be a variable that goes into it, but it's looking at salary. As I mentioned before, kind of what we know about the world, women are paid less than men. So if it's using salary to make that decision, which you probably should for a mortgage application, you're disproportionately going to impact women than men. So you could try to make it more fair by considering it, but then they're getting a different treatment. It's very hard. Even if the ratio of men to women being approved is exactly the same, it could still be totally unfair. I had this previous paper called this method called like equality of effort, where you could say like men and women are accepted 60% of the time, but men are this close to the decision boundary and women are this far. So if you have all things equivalent, you just switch the gender, and the level of effort for the female candidate or applicant to get over the decision threshold is much higher than the man, that algorithm's still unfair. But if you're just looking at the baseline acceptance rates, you wouldn't see that. So I think very personalizing it, like at an individual student level, you might open yourself up to Johnny's getting much easier homework than Susie or something to that effect, and could cause problems.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. But like, let's say schools and states start to talk about alternative pathways to graduation.
Hmm.
We wouldn't necessarily select that pathway because what you're talking about are you're absolutely right. We don't want to in any way discriminate against people, which we've done in the past in schools a long time ago, but allow students to select the pathway, with advice from the counselor, with input from the parents. And if there are alternative pathways, I feel like your company can really help with, let's say there's 3 or 4 different ways a child can get a diploma.
Yep. Yeah, there was actually a ballot measure, not directly on that, but
Yeah, Massachusetts.
in
Right?
Massachusetts for
Yeah.
the MCAS, whether or not that should still be a requirement for graduation. I think it
They
was
voted
removed.
I think they voted it down, yes.
Yeah. So that's not necessarily an alternative pathway, but it was kind of changing the criteria needed for graduation.
I mean, do you see just like the capacity for AI, like continuing to increase exponentially? I mean, I'm in agreement with you that I believe it's more for good. I'm glad that you're more positive about it. But do you see, for people that are just using it but have no idea how it functions or operates, do you see it expanding tremendously in the near
I
future?
think we've plateaued a
Okay.
bit. Because so like OpenAI came out and kind of had the state of the art model for a while, but then Anthropic released Cloud. I have trouble pronouncing that. That's pretty much a parody. Meta's released like a fully open source model, their Llama 3, 3.1 now. That's fairly close. And there's 2 problems. One is like the architecture of the models are all pretty similar, and the second is the training data. They're all basically trained on the same thing. So and I think it's also way too much training data. Like the cost on energy and like compute to train these things is astronomical, and every that's trying to compete is like burning the same compute to learn a model that's basically equivalent, which doesn't seem that great. So I think it's going to take like some theoretical change, probably on the training routine or the architecture to get to the next level. I don't see it growing exponentially now without that. The architecture is based on is a few years old now. Actually, it's this transformer architecture that Google came up with first, but then I think OpenAI really got to market first with their LLM.
And is that what we're seeing with Gemini now? Is that or that
Yeah,
architecture?
Gemini is basically similar too. Yeah, they also are using a transformer based one. I think Llama is slightly different actually, but they're all fairly similar. What it is like an attention mechanism. So previous kind of NLP, natural language processing models, were very like autoregressive. So the next token is what it's called. Let's treat that as like part of a word, is based off of the stream of previous. So if I say like the brown fox, you might guess the next word is going to be jumped because you've seen that before. So where they do really well is they have these attention mechanisms that know where to look kind of in this massive thing to predict the next thing. Not every word in the history is that informative to predict what should come next. So that really helped it scale and make them quite fast. So I think still having something like that. The O1 model that like OpenAI released a few months ago kind of has these reasoning steps. So as opposed to just predicting what the next completion should be, it then kind of internalizes in itself. I wouldn't call it reasoning, but it does like ask itself and then refines it. So maybe something like that, or a bit more of like a human in the loop side of things, so you can course correct before it gets crazy. But also, yeah, just like the low level neural network architecture, I think. Yeah. So long-winded way to say I don't see it growing exponentially right now unless there's another breakthrough.
I clearly don't belong in the room if Mark's throwing out Gemini and you're throwing out Llama. I have no idea what you guys are referencing.
Use the word. I don't even know what it means, but thankfully Andrew does. And
That's Google's ChatGPT equivalent.
Oh my! No, and it's fascinating listening to you talk about it. I mean, you do explain it very clearly, but it's just way over my head.
The space is moving super fast. There's like a new model every week, but then you look at the benchmarks, then they're all pretty equivalent. No one's made a huge leap. Basically, OpenAI is here. Everyone's kind of caught up, and then they're just slowly moving up. But no one's made a big jump again.
But someone's going to.
You saw. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, Nick.
It's okay. Like for most of us, it kind of just hit us one day, and it appeared on our browsers, and people are like, "Wow, look at how cool this is." But you watched it all evolve, correct? Like you saw how it was unfolding in real time.
I mean, even for me, like GPT-3, which was like 2 years ago now, was still pretty groundbreaking and shocking. So like my previous job, we weren't looking at anything in that area. We were very much more focused on small data regime, and still that company is, but they obviously have to integrate with Gen AI. So I think everyone just was working not in their own bubble, but in their own area. And then this Gen AI, like GPT-3 came out from OpenAI, and everyone was just wowed. And then I'll try to figure out if it can help their actual like business area and how they might want to integrate it and stuff. And I do think people are struggling to find ways to productionize it. So like it's quite fun to chat with and stuff, and might use it to help you like draft emails and things. I see the biggest like help, at least with ChatGPT, is the blank page problem. So like, how do I start something?
Writing
and
the
it
prompts,
gives you like
right?
80%. Writing the prompts, but like even non-coding. So like it might be like, how do I write this script? And it will start, but it won't be 100%. It'll be 80%. And you still need to know enough about the area to really improve it. And then people are trying to, use it super broad and like unconstrained, which I think is difficult. And that's kind of why we went the opposite direction with Intellitier. Like we're hyper focused on one use case and then really make sure we do that well, than to have like a general chat about the school, because then I think you're kind of doing everything a bit shallow.
So there's a segment of educators out there who fear that AI is going to replace them. So should they stop worrying or assume the fetal position?
I think they should stop worrying. There was tons of articles. So like, yeah, I'm more of a software developer than anything, about developers being replaced. We'll fire all like the dev team and just have AI write the software. And I don't think anyone's really done that yet. Really, AI should be a tool, like in your toolbox, that you use to help make your life more efficient. So I use like GitHub Copilot to help me code. And I was saying before, it helps, especially on like blank page, but I could not just take what it says blindly and then integrate it. It would just break everything. It's not perfect, but it helps. And I know there's a ton of companies looking at like using Gen AI for curriculum creation, for automatic grading and stuff. I think if you blindly used one to grade all of students' essays and then the student looked at what happened and tried to ask why they got that grade, a lot of this stuff is black box as well. And
Mm.
that would be quite bad. So like the teachers would still need to have some sanity check to confirm what it's doing is there. So it might take from 3 hours to 30 minutes to grade something. So really, it's not replacing anyone. You're still going to need subject matter experts in the area. It should just more be a tool to make your life more efficient.
And so I would imagine the same concerns are not really relevant in terms of IntelliTier. Like they're not replacing counselors, clinicians, social workers, so on. It's just a tool to help support and augment, and more importantly, speed up the process of helping students faster and more efficiently,
Mhm.
but still with the adult driving the ship.
Absolutely. And the other point is on the collaboration side. We spoke to like a lot of BCBAs or like student support teams, and they kind of, well, how they work is they kind of schedule a meeting where everyone has to come in together synchronously, where the teacher might bring the data of Billy, interrupted the class on Monday for this long, for this severity. And then in the room, they then look at the data, understand it, and draft an intervention plan. But with IntelliTier, we can record that data as it happens. The BCBA can look at it when they have time, and you can collaborate and draft an intervention plan without having to find a time to put five
Mm.
people in a room together. But yeah, you still own it at the end of the day. The IntelliTier is not saying do this, you can't edit it. It's really helping to guide you to say, given what we know about the student, given what we know about the MTSS framework, this is what we recommend, and to like, yeah, speed it up essentially.
That's
And
great.
that's critical
That's great.
because
Yeah.
sometimes things get so backlogged, and despite everyone's best intentions, it could take a while to bring
Mhm.
the team together, to reconvene the team. The parent can't make it, so we push the meeting again. Like there are all different obstacles along the way in trying to support students and help move things along and forward. But it sounds like this is really using a wonderful technological solution to overcome a lot of the obstacles that are in the way.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe the final point I make in that is really the AI is like a small component to the product. I think if you just slapped like a chat interface into something and gave it information about MTSS, that wouldn't be very successful. We really thought about how to make the collaboration easy, how to make the data collection easy, while still ensuring like student privacy, how to make customizability easy. So like to add a new behavior event if you wanted to define different classes of event, or like if arguing's not on there or interruption, you can just go and edit it. So it's more of a holistic tool that allows the quick tracking of data, the collaboration, and the AI component to assist you. It's not just, yeah, like a single AI tool. It's a lot more than that.
Amazing.
It's so exciting just to hear the two of you speak. No, really, I feel like we're getting you just before the big breakout all over the country. I really think you I think you
Thanks.
have it.
I think, yeah, you have a second career in marketing if, if you ever want. You speak very highly of us. I listened to the episode with Jose and really, really appreciated it. Yeah, we
Yeah,
actually were
you
just
guys are
featured in
wonderful.
USA Today yesterday. It
Oh
was a
wow!
bit weird
Nice.
timing
Congratulations.
because it's Thanksgiving, so I think, thank you. We'll advertise it a bit more next week, but yeah, that was quite rewarding.
Oh, that's great. Absolute pleasure to talk to you, to meet you, to hear about the great things you guys are doing, and we really hope that we'll have you guys back because it's really an exciting time for New Light and for all of your customers.
Yeah, would love to. I mean, if you guys are, yeah, getting into the more of the video space, I don't know, we could think about like doing like a collaborative webinar or something, maybe like where we like walk through a use case like with you guys live or something. So
That's a
yeah,
great
happy to brainstorm.
that's a
That would
great
be
idea.
great. And if you'd like to catch previous
Cool.
episodes of State of Ed podcast. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or YouTube. You can find us on the web at stateofedpodcast.com, where you'll find links to Neulight and the wonderful and exciting work that Andrew and Jose are doing. You could also follow me on Twitter at Marcus6 or online, marcus6.com, or on YouTube at EduPyro. And you can also check out my new book, Captivate, Engaging and Empowering Students in a World of Digital Distractions. It's available on Amazon and would make the perfect holiday gift for the educator in your life. I'm super excited to share this work with educators everywhere. And if you've read it, please feel free to leave a review and comment on any of my social platforms. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Dr. Andrew Lawrence, thank you so much. We really appreciate your patience and sticking with us through all of our technical glitches during this conversation. But we really appreciate your time and staying up late for us, because you're over on the other side of the pond where it is after midnight.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a great time speaking with you both.